Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Tiana Godsey. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the events coordinator for Natural Lands. I'd like to welcome you to our Outdoors Online Restoring Crum Creek webinar this evening with our Preserve Manager, Mike Coll. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Mike, for presenting for us this evening. This is the first event of this kind where we're going to be giving a little bit more info on some projects on our preserve, namely on Hildacy. And we're excited to spend the evening with you learning about water quality and beyond. So I won't take up too much of your time. I know you're really here to hear from Mike. But before we get started, a few things to note. This event will be recorded, so if you need to leave, no worries. You can get back in, or we will also be sharing the recording with you after the event, hopefully within a week. Due to the style of this event, we ask you to remain muted throughout the presentation, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and we will have time for a question and answer at the end. If you also have any technical support issues, feel free to add them in the chat as well. So just briefly about Natural Lands. Those of you are probably familiar with Natural Lands, but I'd like to introduce you again if you would bear with me. We are a nonprofit organization serving Eastern Pennsylvania and Southern New Jersey to preserve and nurture nature's wonders and create opportunities for joy and discovery in the outdoors for everyone. And we've been at it since the early 1950s, and today nearly 5 million people live within 5 miles of lands under our permanent protection, which is phenomenal. And those of you that shared your closest preserve, you know how awesome it is. Our mission is to save open space by permanently protecting natural areas through acquisition and voluntary land protection agreements, and by helping communities preserve more of their land. We've saved more than 125,000 acres so far. We also care for nature by taking care of our network of 42 nature preserves and 1 public garden located in 2 states and 13 counties, which totals 23,000 some acres. And finally, but not least, to connect people with the outdoors, even online, like we are doing today, creating opportunities for people to connect with and learn from nature. And a brief moment to thank each and every one of you who are members, or if you are not a member, please consider joining today. Your support makes all the stewardship work you see on our preserves possible, as well as the project you will hear about tonight. So thank you for the significant impact you have on our efforts to save open space, care for nature, and connect people outdoors. If you want to learn more, please feel free to visit that link. And thank you, a special thank you to our sponsors, AQUA, for their support in making this deer exclosure project possible, which you are about to hear about from Mike. But I will introduce you very briefly to Mike Coll. He has been managing Natural Lands Hildacy Preserve for the past 15 years, making it beautiful, and lives in the original spring house cottage on the property, spending his days replacing invasive plants with native ones and improving the quality of meadow and woodland habitats there. Mike has a graduate degree from UPenn and currently teaches about restoration ecology in Temple's landscape architecture program. So you may not have known, but you're going to be getting an awesome presentation from Mike, who's an ecologist today. I'm going to stop sharing so Mike can share his screen. Bear with us on this transition stage. And thank you, Mike, for being here and sharing your knowledge with us tonight. Looks like it's working. Beautiful.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight and get to talk about the project that I'm sort of most focused on right now at Hildacy. It's ongoing, and this is a sort of evolving story that I'll be talking about. So I haven't given this presentation before. I'll kind of be a little all over the place, I think, but hopefully we'll get to explain the important parts. So the basis of the project, and also please do, as Tanya said, or Tiana said, please put your questions if you have them while I'm talking in the comments. I'll probably see them pop up, and it's always good to, sort of direct my comments. So I'm not sure what will be most interesting to people, but the general project that we'll be talking about tonight is a deer fence enclosure, which has been installed in the lower meadow at Hildacy. And it's the result of a grant that we received from AQUA to help improve the water quality of Crum Creek. Crum Creek makes up the lower border of Hildacy. And it's a project that I like to think about it as having a trajectory of 100 years. Forests and forested areas like this are only going to be able to grow as fast as trees can grow, right? It's sort of the difficulty of it, and also the beauty of it is that you can only create a forest by using nature's tools, and so this, even though don't plan to be here in 100 years, is the trajectory that I'm thinking of when I'm making decisions about this.
Hmm.
So, just briefly, tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about the project goals, sort of my overall goals for management at Hildacy and how this project relates to them, the construction of the fence that's down there, and then planting, which is really what's begun this spring and will be ongoing for quite a while, as well as the maintenance of those plantings. And I have I just took some drone shots of it yesterday, so we'll have some freshly updated pictures about it, and then we can talk about anything that I didn't go over well enough. And that picture right there is a native praying mantis that I found the other day. Probably most of the mantises you see are non-native ones, but it's kind of tough to see in that picture. They have little stripes on their forearms, and you can tell that it's the Carolina mantis, which is the smaller native version. So goals. These are very broad goals. These are the things that I sort of move towards every day. Restoring the native ecosystem, restoring as many aspects of the native ecosystem as possible. So ecosystem here is heavily degraded, and when you lose pieces of an ecosystem, you're going to lose other pieces that are dependent on them. So the idea is restoring as many aspects as possible and hopefully getting other aspects to sort of join the party along the way. And that it will increase biodiversity, it will increase ecosystem resilience, which is very important in light of things like climate change or any other sort of trauma that's occurring to the ecosystem. If you have a forest which, just for example, has only 3 types of trees in it, and you have a blight like we're seeing now with the American beech, or what we've seen recently with the ash, and it knocks out one of those 3 species, you're going to lose a third of your forest. Whereas if you had a forest with 100 species in it and you lose one of your species, you're only losing 1%, right? So having more biodiverse ecosystems allows ecosystems to take the trauma that occurs to them, take changes over time, and not completely collapse. And ecological services, that's a big part of this project, particularly in any project, but things like clean water, carbon sequestration, rainwater, holding the rainwater. Yeah. All these types of things are ecological services, and more diverse ecosystems are better at those. And, we think about extinction generally as like global extinction, but local extinctions are things that can occur too. And by preventing local extinctions, by having populations of species that can persist in many different areas, that's a strategy to prevent global extinctions. And I also think about creating beautiful places. I mean, this is very important ecologically, and it's also important that people have a chance to go somewhere and connect with nature and just explore the beauty of what's going on outside. Obstacles. So this is I'll talk about the picture first, just because it's not the way that I normally look, but I have, Tiana mentioned that I do teach a class at Temple, and the last, I guess 2 years ago, the class started including humorous pictures of me. Everyone had like one slide in their final presentation. This one was my favorite. I think pretty well captures what I do on a daily basis. So the obstacles that I'm really always dealing with, no matter what we're doing, it stems from the fact that just about every ecosystem in this region is fragmented and has been clear cut at least one or two times in the last 100 or 200 years. So every ecosystem that we're working with in this area, unless we're out on the West Coast or certain spots of in the Adirondacks or somewhere like that, heavily disturbed ecosystems here. There are tons of non-native species here. When you look into a woodlands that's not heavily managed, the majority of plants you see are non-native. Maybe not the canopy trees, but in the understory and on the ground, it's almost exclusively Asian and European plant species in most places. And with that comes a reduced amount of native plants present, right? So then when there are disturbances and there is an opportunity for something else to grow, it's very likely going to be a non-native plant because the seed sources for the natives just aren't there. And obviously the overpopulation of white-tailed deer has a huge impact on that. Their population is easily tenfold what it would have historically been. And what that means is that they are going to browse the leaves of just about every plant lower than 5 feet, so that, and with a preference for native plants. But, when you think about that level of the forest, of course, we're talking about the elimination of just about all shrubs that are not non-native. But also what you're eliminating there are sapling trees. And they're both an important part of a forest ecosystem, but also as you have natural death in the canopy of a forest, if you don't have young trees that are waiting to take over that spot, then it's just going to be another thing that's filled with invasive vines and whatever else comes in. So last year, AQUA had a program where they were seeking projects to improve the water quality in Crum Creek that didn't involve directly planting trees, which a lot of their other programs and growing greener programs do focus on planting trees. And that was when I thought about how great it would be to have a larger deer fence area. And so that was what the proposal was for. We suggested we could have an 800 linear feet of 8-foot tall deer fence installed, which is just about an acre of land. And then that would allow planting of that area at a much higher density and without having to constantly cage and protect everything that we plant from deer. Now, I'm not going to go through all the project benefits there that I've listed. The one that I highlighted in blue, because this project is in the floodplain. I'll show you some pictures of exactly where it is if you haven't seen it. But among the benefits of having native plants in proximity to waterways is what type of leaves are falling into the waterways. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the idea that insects have highly specialized relationships to native plant leaves that they evolved with. And for instance, monarch caterpillars only can digest milkweed. And this is something which repeats throughout the majority of the insect world. But the same thing is going on within freshwater ecosystems where you have macroinvertebrates that are living in the water. Many of them are insect larvae, and they are eating the leaves that fall into it. And they function as sediment cleaning. They improve the water quality. But if you have leaves that are falling into the stream that are not native, it's very likely that they have a different chemical structure to native leaves. They may fall into the creek at different times because the leaves, the trees shed their leaves at different times when the insects or macroinvertebrates are not expecting it, and so on. And So as a result of not having native plants to drop leaves into the stream, you lose some of these invertebrate communities, and then you have decreases in water quality as a result. But like I said, just one of many benefits. More specifically, the goals that I have for this project, and this is a drone shot from when the fence is not yet installed here. This is, I just mowed that area, which is approximately where the fence is now. We're looking to improve the water quality in Crum Creek, supporting the ecosystem in the water, like I was just talking about. Increasing native plant diversity is always a goal that increases the diversity of insects and the number of insects and everything else in the ecosystem eating insects. The floodplain habitat is very important for, there's a lot of birds that breed down there in this floodplain. There's also birds that migrate along the creek. So having plenty of insects for them to eat along their way is important. And this is also an opportunity to learn. This is a different way of planting that I haven't done before, although it has been studied in other places, similar dense type of planting techniques. But, I think a key thing about trying new techniques like this is in the monitoring of it. And so I'm recording all the things that we're doing and all the plants that I'm planting. And over time, that's going to give us a data set that we can then do vegetative surveys about it, compare to other areas, and learn about the pros and cons of this method. So it was last year in June that the grant was awarded, and the fence that you can see there was installed in July. Pretty nice looking fence, in my opinion. This also gave me a chance to really prep the area. There are some trees in the area that were there from previous plantings, but for the most part, it was a meadow with a combination of some native species and some non-native species. But last year, I did quite a bit of clearing of that area, herbiciding a lot of the plants that were in there, and really trying to clear the slate for the trees that were to be planted so that it could have the greatest chance of success. These are just a couple of examples of other things that I do around Hildacy. Really, everything that I plant, with very few exceptions, has to be caged. Otherwise, it will just be eaten by deer. And in large part, we'll do tree tubes with new tree plantings or cages like you see there on the left. Or I've made a number of sort of smaller size enclosures like the two you see on the right. If you have an area that's roughly 25 by 25, say, like 100 feet of fence, which is not very large, but you can get away with like a 5-foot tall fence in an area like that. But if you get any bigger than that, I mean, deer can easily jump over it. It's just that they won't. So that's why when you get to an area like an acre, you need to have at least 8 feet in order to prevent them from doing that. I have a question here. I didn't stop lesser celandine. That is definitely a tough one. Although in this area, I was able to herbicide it. So the problem with lesser celandine is that it's so prolific and it grows in areas where there are other things growing that I don't want to harm. So it's only in an area like this where you're basically going to start from scratch that it's really possible, at least as far as I know, to prevent it. All right, so this is one of my sort of first mock-ups of the fence, of what will go in there, just very generally putting, you can see the fence is installed there and where I'm going to leave a path so that I can get around and do the maintenance, and different areas which will be shrub and versus trees. And I also did leave some areas where there were good native populations of like herbaceous stuff that was really solid that I left there. We just talked about this herbicide that was done last year. And yeah, this year we began planting shrubs. So another part of this project, which I'm very excited about, is that when I plan to source a lot of the seeds for this area from the surrounding woodlands. So when we started researching what plants would go into this, we first thought about the what are called like pioneer species. So after a disturbance and the beginning of a forest always happens with shrub and small tree species. And because of the deer pressure in this area, those are basically absent from the forest that's here, with the exception of spicebush, and really just about spicebush is the only one that's native that's here. The shrub species are missing. So let's see if I have, well, I'll talk about it for a minute, but we did a lot of research. We actually found some vegetative surveys from the early 1900s that specifically mentioned Crum Creek and gave lists of shrub species that were here in Delaware County. And so those ones, because they are not here, I have to source from a nursery. And that's what I have planted so far. And then they will be like the ecological engineers they talk about, like setting the stage for the later stages of succession when I'll be able to collect seeds and have the tree species move in. This is a recent picture from just the other day. And what you can mostly notice about this picture is that only about a third of it has been planted so far. So basically the third to the right side of this picture you can see is a little bit greener than everywhere else. And the reason for that is because I want to plant very densely. One of the benefits of this is that instead of planting in rows and with spacing in between, like we normally do if we're planting in tree tubes or in cages, so that we have a chance to get in there and do maintenance on it. In this area, I'm able to plant very close together, more like what would be found in a naturally regenerating forest. So the shrub species are planted 3 feet apart. So just in that front third, there are 400 shrubs that have been planted. And then next year I'll do sort of the next third, and the next year after that, I'll do the third after that. And then we'll just be going back in and planting seeds and whatever else is missing from the palette at that point. Yeah, so that's sort of the planted part right now. This is the survey that we found about Delaware County. Is very interesting. If anybody's interested, you can email me and I'll send you a copy of it. Just talking about what plants were actually seen here back before so much of the ecosystem was lost. And going through that research and some others, and we came up with a list of species that we were very confident about that they would have historically been found in this area, that they'll do well in these conditions. And divided into, I mean, these are just some of them that I put on this slide, but it's a longer list into the subcanopy, the canopy, and the shrub species. We also, I have a larger spreadsheet here. This is showing the canopy trees that I plan to have in there. And many of them, like I said, the canopy trees are already found on Hildacy. Even though the woodlands here has been clear cut, I still expect that the canopy trees that are here are likely the descendants of what was the original ecosystem. It's not likely that people planted them for the most part. So these species, also importantly on this document, you can see when the collection period is for these species. Some of them, like the maples, already came in early spring this year, and I do have a bunch of maples that I've been propagating. The majority of it will come in the fall, September through November, where I'll be able to collect hickories and a bunch of oaks, and my plan initially, at least, is not even to try to propagate them separately, but just if I can collect as many acorns or hickory nuts as possible and then just sow them directly into the fenced area. I think particularly because the shrubs will already be creating like a little micro habitat, a little bit of shade for the things that come next. I think it will be possible to just have the trees directly into there. These were the shrub species. So this is what we have planted so far. These are I think it's 7 species that, well, they're shrubs and small trees like the alder. All of these are what we would consider pioneer species. They do well in the hydric conditions of the floodplain, and obviously all native. And so far they've been doing really good down there. I think it's been a nice, very wet season, and they're all looking solid. This was one species that I couldn't source from the nursery just because it wasn't available that I wanted, which is the maple leaf viburnum. And we have a couple of maple leaf viburnums on the property that I planted previously. So this is another new thing that I've not tried before, which is to collect softwood cuttings. It's just basically the new growth that the shrub puts on this year. And you can see the coloration of the stems change where the new growth is, and you can cut that off and trim the leaves down. The leaves are like a maple leaf shape, but as you can see, they're kind of cut all in half, which reduces the amount of evapotranspiration that they do. And so you put them in this very sandy mixture of soil that's wet, and I keep them in this little enclosure in my greenhouse area, and every day I mist the leaves. And I dipped their tips also in rooting hormone. So this was right when I just did it, but actually today it still looks pretty good. I've lost a couple of them, but it's been almost 3 weeks now, and I can't call it a success yet, but I will say they're not dead. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some of those, and I'll be able to include that in the plant palette. This is just, very simple diagram, obviously, of thinking about the different layers of the forest. But I think it's important, again, thinking about the 100-year plan, that in the construction of a forest, starting with these lower shrub layer and mid-story layer and allowing the canopy layer to emerge out of that seems to be historically the way that forests were created. And my hope is that by doing it in this method, rather than just planting the canopy trees to start, we'll have a lot more complexity in the ecosystem, along the way, and in 100 years from now. But I like Doug Talamay talks about it like an apartment complex. You want to have people living at all the different floors. I have also been putting some forb seed down on the ground, so there's a nice ground cover there as well. And this is, again, current pics along that front edge. The path that walks by this is just above the top of the screen here. And it's kind of tough to pick them out, but I mean, there are many shrubs in there. I can see a couple of the rudbeckia flowers. Here you can see some of the shrubs. Nice that there are already a couple of larger trees in there. There's pin oaks back there that are already creating these little different microclimates in there, and a lot of nice structure. We talked about monitoring, and this is another monitoring technique that I'm using. This is an audio recorder that's produced by Cornell University that I installed inside that enclosure, and it records audio for 20 minutes at the start of each hour. And then you can take that data out of there and put it into Cornell's software, and it spits back out all of the birds that it heard over that time. So it's obviously ton of data, but I think it will be interesting to see if over time we can see a change in the birds that are using that area as the vegetation matures. This is just a much higher up view. You can kind of see Crum Creek through the trees there towards the bottom on the right, and you can see the fence area. And this shows the proximity, to the reservoir right there. So the reservoir sort of goes under the road and flows out and comes right next to the creek. That's the end of the presentation. I couldn't get PowerPoint to upload this video, but I could show you a video if you'd like to see of the drone flying over. See if this works. Tiana, tell me if this works. Can you see that, Tiana?
Yep, looking good.
All right, let's see. Might be a little herky-jerky, but
It's okay.
you see there's a lot of nice ferns there that I left in the middle. It's one of the patches of sort of herbaceous, and there's some Allegheny blackberry in there. Yeah, it's really tough to see, I guess. There are a lot of shrubs just mixed in there. There's definitely a lot of stilt grass in there too. I'm going to have to deal with that in the future. But I've been actually, another nice thing about having only planted part of it is we've been able to go in there and really just hand weed a lot of it, like the mile a minute and stuff like that that's coming in. We've been able to pull it out.
Mike, you said it's only about a third planted. Do you know when it'll be like fully planted? Do you have plans for that, or is that like a?
Yeah, I mean, I think I plan to do the same thing that I did this year for the next 2 years. So that was kind of, as we're pulling up here, you can see the front third, and then further towards the top of the screen are the other 2/3. The idea is to get that shrub layer installed first, and I think it will create, because of the density of the planting, almost like a mini canopy, maybe 3 or 3 to 5 feet tall, that'll create some shade and some nice conditions. And over that time, I'll be doing the seed collection stuff. So just trying to play like a numbers game with it and stop share here. And just constantly putting seeds into the area, and so I think that can be ongoing, and hopefully we'll have success with that. And if not, if we get 5 years in or 10 years in and we do a vegetative survey and we say, well, these species aren't there, then we can source them from nurseries. But obviously it's, for a ton of reasons, I think the most efficient way to do it, not having some nursery out somewhere else growing the plants and then shipping them, and then how much mortality do you have in the planting process, and on and on. Plus getting the seeds from here, you're getting the local ecotype, and just putting them straight into the ground and letting them sort of self-select in a little bit more of a random way. I'm really interested to see how well that works. All right, let me see. I did see some comments in here. Yeah, removing dams. What can be done? I mean, that's tough, right? Small dams, big dams. There's a lot of dams. That work is being done by different groups like Trout Unlimited, and one of my students was really involved in trying to get the native brook trout access. Exactly what you're saying. It's definitely an issue. The problem is always like, who is there, whose property is it going through, and who's paying for the work. Pawpaw trees. I'm a fan of pawpaw trees. I have planted some of those around here. They're native, and I like having them. I guess it wasn't one of the ones that we specifically called out, just because I don't know that there's so much of a floodplain tree, but they are. I have planted some on the preserve. Bluebird photo. Uh-huh. Well, that's the beauty of it. I don't have to install tubes because they're inside the fence, right? Arrowwood, yeah. Sure, if you want to donate some, Laura, if you want to donate some Arrowwood viburnum, I would. That's one of the ones that I have in there, so sure, I would take some. Does the fence go underground? No, it doesn't go underground. Um, when you think about it, I'm not that concerned about um, even like a turtle might have to like turn to go around it, but it's not really big enough to make that much of a difference. Like, uh, I would think anything walking in that direction would be able to walk around, or I mean, a turtle can probably even fit through the holes in that fence. And groundhogs could get in there. I'm sure. I'm sure groundhog and fox and stuff like that can get in there if they want. They're just fish slatters would be nice. Paw comes in 5 different flavors. Is that right? I didn't know that. It's not the flavor of it that bothers me. It's always the texture. It's a little mouth feel. I don't know.
I have yet to try a pawpaw,
Hmm.
but I've heard they're good. Laura says, do we have beavers?
Um, Sometimes, but not ones that stay. I see along the creek there is often not often, occasionally beaver damage for sure. And unfortunately, the only time that I've seen beaver here is when they get hit by cars on the road. I actually think it's about the juvenile beavers will move from where they were born downstream to try to find new habitat. And I think they get to the road, when they are coming downstream through the reservoir there, and they get to that road and they probably can't cross it in the water. So they climb up over and get hit by cars. I keep hoping one of them would come down and set up shop in that little wood section that's between, you can see actually, right? Well, I don't know if you look at my screen anymore, but between where Hildacy is and where the reservoir is, there is like a set of wet forest right there that I always think would be the one place that a beaver could go and no one would bother him. I mean, most places people are like getting rid of them.
Amazing. Thank you, Mike. I learned honestly so much from that presentation. I took like 2 pages of notes. So thank you for teaching
Sorry.
me things and all of us. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to leave them in. But we'll wrap up and then we'll also be sending out a recording. So if you have a question that comes to you later, feel free to let us know and I can always send it over to Mike. But thank you so much, Mike, for all that you do to make Hildacy beautiful. Those who are nearby, please visit. If you haven't been there yet, please check it out.
Yeah, do come. You can, it's not a difficult walk to get there either. You come down from the parking lot. It's probably, I don't know if it's a quarter mile or maybe a little more than a quarter mile, but you come down there and you can't miss it. The path goes right by it, and you can see the progress and watch over time as it grows. I'm
Yeah, and
excited.
it's quite a thing to see it. It is a very large fence, and it's cool to see Mike in there. And I saw you had your son in there in like March when I was doing some events, and it was really cool seeing him like planting trees. I was like, yeah, I get the young generation out there, so really neat. Kim says,
Game
Mike,
Commission, huh?
no.
Well, no, I don't think that they are. I mean, um, the Game Commission, well, I guess I should give them a little credit. I think they made some more tags available this year than had been in the past. Um, it's a very difficult problem. My job would be like 100 times easier if I didn't have to protect everything that I planted from deer. Um, we have hunters on the property that there's 5 hunters that are sanctioned by us that do bow hunting here. they take out some deer, but not really enough to make a big impact on the, or really any impact on the population, I don't think. It's a very difficult problem. I think that one thing that works is having deer culls, which, you are expensive and you get sharpshooters to come in and you take out a whole bunch of deer at one time. They're often very unpopular with the public, and they are very expensive because of all the permitting required and all stuff like that. Aside from that, I don't know. I haven't seen a solution that seems like it'll work. Shooting birth control. Yeah, I mean, shooting birth control or shooting bullets both work, but if you don't hit enough of them, it neither does, right?
This is true. Wonderful. Anyone have any more questions for Mike? You can leave them in the chat or
Yeah, it's funny because you can't even, they're not funny, but it's too bad. I mean, you're not even allowed to sell anything that's wild caught because of like FDA approvals, right? Even if you buy venison at a store, which is uncommon, it will be farm raised venison. You're not allowed to do that. It's a very interesting, if anybody's, there's a company called Maui Nui, which is a very interesting whole story. There's a great podcast that people listen to. Tim Ferriss, he interviewed the founder of the company. They hunt an invasive deer species that is overpopulated on the island of Maui. And it's just this whole incredible story about how they came about doing that and getting FDA approval for it. And you can get a kind of pricey, but not outlandishly pricey subscription from Maui Nui and they do have the FDA approval, and they will ship you it's like an African deer species that's on the island of Maui, and it's insanely nutritious meat because it's like foraging on this volcanic area. It's like probably the healthiest meat in the world, and they're also obviously helping the ecosystem there because it's just been devastated by this ever since someone brought it to Maui in like the 1800s to give it as a gift to something, or 3 deer, and now they're like destroy the whole island. So it's an interesting story. Maui Nui, you should look it up.
That's why.
Yeah, you can donate it to the food pantries. You're right.
Good to know. And yeah, and as Mike mentioned, we do have the controlled hunting on our preserve. So please check the website during the fall, winter months, mostly November, December, for those dates. And just make sure you don't visit the preserves, or wear orange is always a good rule of thumb. Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to send them along to us afterwards. But we'll probably wrap up here. And thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your knowledge. And as Mike said, please come check it out. Visit the preserve, come down to Hildacy, spend some time by Crum Creek. It is really beautiful and really cool to see that big fence and all the work Mike's doing there. So also, please stay tuned. This fall, we have more Outdoors Online webinars coming up. And we also, if you want to catch Mike in person, we have some bird walks this fall. We have 4 scheduled across September and October. They'll be on our website mid-August, early September. So keep an eye out, and you'll see Mike in the field and me around. So thank you all for being here.
I'm more fun out in the field, but I'm not staring at a screen. Is where I'd rather be.
I mean, this was still fun for me.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here.